Juan Ponce de Leon was the Spanish conquistador who purportedly discovered Florida in 1513, and on his second visit was mortally wounded there by an Indian's arrow. He died in Cuba, 1521.
And believing that this land was an island, they named it La Florida, because it had a very beautiful view of many and cool woodlands, and it was level and uniform, and because, moreover, they discovered it in the time of the Feast of Flowers, Pascua Florida. Juan Ponce wished to confirm in the name to these two reasons. He went ashore to get information and take possession.
Another conquistador of note, Hernando de Soto, soon followed up with treasures in his fantasy, fed by cabeza de vaca and other Spaniard conquerors in South America and the western continent. His men tread Indian lands across most of the southeast, including parts of South Carolina and Georgia, all the way to the Mississippi River. De Soto himself was buried in the river by his men. Some Indian populations had been persuaded that the conquistador was divinity, so it is believed his disappearance was kept secret in order not to disturb an already precarious relationship with the tribes. Upon an early encounter, the weary Spaniard camp was accosted initially by friendly overtures from Indians, but soldier suspicions grew that a more sinister intent lurked in the large number of native canoes that surrounded them.
With loud cries, the crossbowmen, who were ready, shot at them and struck 5 or 6. They withdrew in splendid order. No one abandoned his paddle, even though the one near them fell. Afterward they came frequently and landed, and when they went toward them, they would return to their canoes. Those canoes were very pleasing to see, for they were very large and well built, and together with the awnings, the plumes of feathers, the shields and banners, and the many men in them, they had the appearance of a beautiful fleet of galleys. As for the mighty river, it was nearly a half-league wide, and if a man stood still on the other side, one could not tell whether he were a man or something else. It was of great depth and of very strong current. Its water was always turgid, and continually many trees and wood came down it, borne along by the force of the water and current. It had abundance of fish of various kinds, and most of them different from those of the fresh waters of Spain.
Alabama and Mississippi, the hearts of Dixie, stayed sparsely populated during and after the Revolutionary War. It was the French, actually, who founded the region's first European settlement at Biloxi and Old Mobile in 1702. The city was moved to the current site of Mobile in 1711. The British then claimed the area after the 7 Years' War, turning La Louisiana into British West Florida. The territory was divided between the U.S. and Spain after the Revolution, and British forces surrendered to American forces along Mobile Bay in the War of 1812. In 1820, after statehood was declared, Alabama's population equaled approximately 125,000, including some free blacks. 10 years later, there were 300,000 residents, nearly 1/5 of them enslaved. Next door, Mississippi became the nation's 20th state. By 1860, Mississippi was the nation's top cotton-producing state, and slaves made up 55% of its inhabitants. In other words, the cession of land in today's southeastern U.S. was a messy process. Creeks and Chickasaws, Cherokee, Choctaws, and Seminoles were accommodating, at least initially, and many assumed much of the European demeanor in economy and negotiation. The 5 civilized tribes, as they have been labeled, inhabited arable lands beside the cotton growers, and some even owned slaves. However, Seminole Wars and Andrew Jackson eventually finished off the amiable camaraderie as the American frontier dwellers in the South pushed along the Gulf of Mexico to New Orleans and on to Texas and the West. The Mobile Bay watershed itself drains more than 40,000 square miles, covering approximately 2/3 of the state of Alabama and parts of Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. After De Soto, a large expedition of Tristan de Luna y Arellano attempted to establish a permanent colony for Spain nearby at Pensacola in 1559. To counter the forces of the Spaniards who founded neighboring Pensacola, in 1702 French colonists created a deep-sea port at Dauphin Island and founded French Louisiana's capital at Mobile, north of Mobile Bay on the Mobile River. The original settlement relocated in 1711 to the head of Mobile Bay. Cotton was its major transshipment product for a long time, but today, like most of the area of the Gulf between Pensacola and eastern Texas, the offshore is dotted with enormous natural gas and oil drilling rigs feeding fuels through undersea and underground pipelines that stretch all the way north to New England and the Midwest. Mobile, like New Orleans, further west, maintained port characteristics with large estuary outflows into Mobile Bay, dubbed the Bay of the Holy Spirit, adjacent to a considerable collection of crustacean and sea life in the Gulf of Mexico. And like New Orleans, the French and Spanish at various times both maintained tentative control and jostled with the Indians along the coastline and upland areas visited by De Soto.